Hello, welcome to the Global View on this Thursday. I'm Andrew Gagan. Good to have you with us again here at AusBiz. Let's get across what has happened overnight. US President Donald Trump has ruled out taking Greenland by force. In a speech at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland, President Trump stepped back from threats to impose tariffs on those European countries opposing his attempts to take control of the Arctic territory.
Would you like me to say a few words of Greenland? I was going to leave it out of the speech, but I think I would have been reviewed very negatively. I have tremendous respect for both the people of Greenland and the people of Denmark, tremendous respect. But every NATO ally has an obligation to be able to defend their own territory. And the fact is, no nation or group of nations is in any position to be able to secure Greenland other than the United States. We're a great power, much greater than people even understand.
Well, the US leader said Western Arctic allies could forge a new deal that satisfies his desire for a Golden Dome missile defence system and access to critical minerals while blocking Russia and China's ambitions in the Arctic.
All the United States is asking for is a place called Greenland, where we already had it as a trustee, but respectfully returned it back to Denmark not long ago after we defeated the Germans, the Japanese, the Italians, and others in World War II. We gave it back to them. We were a powerful force then, but we are a much more powerful force now.
Well, President Trump says he tasked Vice President J.D. Vance, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, and Special Envoy Steve Witkoff to take part in the discussions and would make more information available as those discussions progress. Well, global shares have rebounded overnight after those comments from President Trump and the fact that he will not impose tariffs that he's threatened on those European countries. On Wall Street, we can see all the major indices finishing in the green. Some of the mega caps which had led the tech sell-off in the previous session regained, including Nvidia and Alphabet. Netflix fell heavily, having reported a muted outlook in its latest earnings. The streaming giant stock was also weighed by a pause of share buybacks to help fund the purchase of Warner Bros. Discovery's studio and streaming businesses. Earnings were more positive numbers from banks sent the regional bank index up more than 4%, hitting its highest level in more than a year. Charles Schwab rose after reporting higher fourth quarter profit, and Citizens Financial surged on the back of more than a 30% increase in quarterly profit. Energy was among the best performing sectors, with it buoyed by Halliburton, which gained after earnings beat estimates, while EQT and Expand Energy gained as natural gas prices hit a 6-week high on cold weather in North America. United Airlines rose after the carrier issued an upbeat outlook for the current quarter and the full year, other airlines benefiting from that positive sentiment. Johnson & Johnson dipped despite forecasting 2026 sales and profit ahead of estimates. And Kraft Heinz fell after regulatory filing showed Berkshire Hathaway may shed its more than 27% stake in the consumer company. Well, a proposal to cap credit card interest rates would amount to economic disaster, according to JP Morgan Chase Chief Executive Jamie Dimon. He warned, seeking to provide cost of living relief. President Trump called for the cap early this month without detailing how the plan would be implemented. Appearing at the Economic Forum in Davos, Jamie Dimon said it would remove credit from 80% of Americans, and that is their backup credit. Well, meanwhile, in the UK, inflation in December rose to 3.4% year on year. That's compared with the prior reading of 3.2%. US Treasury yields have edged lower, pulling back from multi-month highs reached in the previous session after a steep sell-off as a recovery in Japanese government bonds helped steady global fixed income markets. The US 2-year is sitting at around 3.6%, the 10-year slipping to 4.27%. US dollar index up slightly on the day. The Aussie is trading at 67.6 US cents. Oil prices edged higher on optimism around tighter supply after a temporary shutdown at 2 large fields in Kazakhstan and on slow progress in reversing output cuts in Venezuela. Brent futures up 0.5% at $65 a barrel. Gold prices have continued to rise despite President Trump striking a less confrontational tone. Spot gold up around 1% at close to $4,800 an ounce. Copper has down about 1%. Iron ore little change at 105 US a ton. And Bitcoin currently trading at just under 90,000 US dollars. All right, lots to unpack. Of course, courtesy of Donald Trump. Let's get to it. And the market reaction. Ira Epstein joining us from Linn Associates. Ira, welcome back. So,
Thanks.
What did you make of those comments from Donald Trump and the market reaction?
First, thanks for having me. Donald Trump, as usual, goes in, guns not blazing. They stayed in the holster this time. But I think that if you understand the man, he creates the situation that he can diffuse in a meeting like this. And that's exactly what he ended up doing. For the Aussie people and other people that are hearing this, the idea of an invasion in Greenland is extremely unpopular in America, one of the most extreme numbers in the polls that we've seen. So that was never going to happen. The idea that Trump wants to take it over is also a problem in the American people. But having a working relationship that is better than we have, so we, under Trump's ideas, can defend against hypersonic missiles, so that we can help Australia tap into the natural resources, so that we don't have to depend on NATO coming that far to defend us. That's the important thing. So at the end of the day, the idea that he was able to diffuse this puts him back on the world stage, and in his mind, what a great negotiator. I mean, if you're asking me, that's what it is. And the market looked at it that way. The killer, of course, was he took off the table the tariffs he was putting on Europe, on the European, actually NATO members, that's the way to look at it, on NATO members, and the market looked at that very positively. What people aren't looking at is the VIX. The VIX fell to them looking right now, 15.8%. That's a pretty big decline. It's back down to 16.9. So while the stock markets rallied about 1.5, they haven't made up what they've lost this week, but it was a neat rally. And Andrew, what I think is you've got to look at these deep breaks the way we did in April. You get these breaks that come out of left field. They're always caused by some event. That event gets resolved, and then the markets come back, and they come back often with a vengeance, because at the end of the day, the U.S. economy is a powerhouse. The earnings are good. Inflation is not going up. There's a lot to point out that wage inflation is now starting to fall a little bit. And if that happens, then services inflation will fall, and that'll put the market back on track down the road, not now, down the road for potentially more rate cuts. We get the PCE numbers in the morning, and that's one of the Fed's favorite indicators, and how I look at them is pretty simple. I think they're going to show that inflation is stable, not dropping, and the Fed shouldn't cut. It's going to sit tight for a bit.
All right. Well, with regards to Greenland, so an invasion is off the table, tariffs are off the table, but, I mean, does it remove that uncertainty for markets? Because the detail is still lacking. He says he's still going to get Greenland.
Well, here's what's going to happen from my point of view. Do I know? Come November, the odds are the president's going to lose control of the House of Representatives. That really effectively ends the things he can get done other than executive orders. So he will lose that backing. That's how the press is playing it up in America right now, and we'll see what that does. As you know, the goal in how he negotiates is he wants to keep you, if you will, off balance at all times. Say one thing, do another. Make a threat, back off, but then do just enough of the follow-through, like he did in Venezuela when he went after Maduro. As soon as you do that, then you've got everybody confused. And I think Europe was in that position, and they were wondering just how far was he going to go with all this. So I'm of the opinion that the Greenland situation will be here for a very long time. There will be fights about it. A framework is not a deal. It's just that they've agreed to set up a way to talk about it and what he wants out of it. That doesn't mean we'll get it. It just means there's a way to talk about it. Is it off the table? No. But is it now number one that you should worry about? Oh, no. It's way down that list.
Ira, of course, precious metals have very much benefited from that geopolitical uncertainty. Are you expecting, perhaps we're likely to see gold and silver to continue to build at these levels?
You know, what we have is called a parabolic rise in the market. They never end well. They generally run out of steam. You're not going to be able to tell where it does it, because nobody rings a bell to say, hey, it's over. But I do think as you're approaching, you're at 48.37 in the Fed gold futures, that as you're getting near 5,000, you're starting to get overdone. The silver's gotten up to what, the 90? You're realistic in saying, how do we keep up the $6 mark at this point? Because it shuts off demand for products. What people have to understand is as EV cars gain more overall share around the world, one of those cars takes 4 times the amount of copper that a regular car does. And of course, as we keep building out AI centers, that's another huge demand. In America, if we can get housing going, which we haven't been able to, but you can see the president said large corporations will not be allowed to buy public housing. Well, that shuts off that demand and puts a little bit more in the market. The president's not going to get through a 10% cap on credit. If he did, the creditors, you can't make them lend. They can't make them have to provide you with credit, and they'll just say no. They're calling in your credit card and they don't want to do business with you.
Goodness, is a question of knowing where to look at the moment, isn't it, under this Trump presidency? But as you say, that's how he rolls. He likes to keep people wrong-footed. Ira, great to catch up. Thanks for joining us from Linn Associates.
And you, thank you for having me again. Goodbye, all.
All right, let's turn to the local market just ahead of the open then. We are expecting a positive session. That's courtesy of what we heard from Donald Trump, which obviously buoyed investor sentiment globally. So SPY futures there up more than 0.5%. We'll unpack that, and a raft of quarterlies too coming our way. And we shouldn't forget too, the all-important job numbers for December. They'll be released later this morning. Join us in just a couple of minutes.